This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Welcome to the show, Real Talkers. You know, we always want there to be a takeaway, a benefit for you downloading an episode of Real Talk, showing up in our live chat, or checking out an episode later when you're on your commute home, or walking your dog, or maybe heading out to your favorite pocket of Crown land for a snowy but soul-filling May-long weekend. This is an episode of Real Talk that I guarantee will deliver. You know, I was lucky enough to host the Mayor's State of the City address presented by the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce just a short time ago. A sold-out room, about 1,100 people showing up at Edmonton's magnificent convention center overlooking the River Valley to hear His Worship Mayor Amarjeet Sohi's assessment of where the city's at. And we're talking about finances. We're talking about social causes. We're talking about relationships with other municipalities, with the province, with the feds. We're talking about some of the crises, housing, the growth of the city, population, and otherwise. And as I was sitting there, I was thinking, you know, there's more conversation to be had. And wouldn't it be cool if Real Talkers could have the inside scoop, a front row seat, so to speak, to hear the mayor and the CEO of the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce, a former cabinet minister, by the way, former minister of municipal affairs, understands what's going on, right around the Real Talk Roundtable. And so that's what we present today. Coming up in about 30 seconds, Edmonton Mayor Amarjeet Sohi and Edmonton Chamber CEO Doug Griffiths. But first, I have to let you know about our friends at Relo, Alberta's top real estate school, that are presenting this episode. I read this email that we got from JR. This is the best kind of testimonial. JR did not go with Relo when they were looking to start up their real estate career, and so they wrote their real estate exam and failed. And then JR thought, what? I'm studying as hard as I can. And then they studied, and then they went back and they rewrote the real estate exam and failed. And then JR heard us talking about Relo on Real Talk, and so JR doubled down on the investment and signed up for Relo's courses, and, well, you know the rest. Ended up connecting with Relo's online instructors, ended up taking advantage of the tutorials on the weekends, and on the third try, JR passed their real estate exam with flying colors, now practicing real estate in the province of Alberta, thanks to the team at Relo. Congratulations to JR. You too can be like JR, but maybe skip failing the first two exams with those other guys and go straight to Relo.ca. Make sure you use the promo code Ryan100 to save $100 off both the Alberta residential real estate bundle and the Alberta commercial real estate bundle. That's the promo code Ryan100 at Relo.ca. What a pleasure to welcome two movers and shakers back to the Real Talk table. The relatively newly installed President and CEO of the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce, Doug Griffiths, and His Worship, the Mayor of Edmonton, Amarjeet Sohi. Good morning to you both.
Well, good morning. Thank you so much for having us.
Good morning.
This was your first State of the City address as CEO of the Chamber. This is an event that business people, investors, politicos, and engaged citizens kind of have circled on their calendar every year.
Yeah, well, and I was really excited that it was sold out. There were over 1,000 people there. There was no room for anybody else, and that's a really good sign, I think, for the city, but also, you know, as the 7-month-old chamber president and CEO. I mean, to see that people are excited about what the chamber is doing and they're attending these events. New faces in the room too. It was really exciting.
Yeah, I know that obviously there was some news coverage of the event. I talked about the event in your address briefly on the show, but we've got an audience now I know that'll be interested to get into it, and we've got the luxury of time to get into it. So your assessment, why don't we start generally speaking of the state of the city in May of 2024?
Yeah, I think in the past, the state of city has been about mayor talking and no opportunity for Q&A. I think Doug and his team did a phenomenal job of kind of reconfiguring the state of the city. So I think that worked really well, Doug. The Q&A part was pretty interactive, and also got probably more information as well for the audience to hear from me. I am pretty excited about our city. I've been in this seat for 2.5 years now. I was on council before that as a council member. our city has gone through some pretty difficult times. I think the whole world has gone through some difficult time living through COVID and the aftermath of COVID and ramification of that on mental health, on addictions, on housing, and everything else that we experience in our city. But our city is booming. More than 100,000 people moved here over the last 2 years. And that is exciting. That's wild. That's 10% population growth. And those people are creating jobs.
Yeah, I mean, to put it, it's more than the city of Red Deer.
Oh, absolutely. Bigger than that. And that's why,
we need to emphasize, it's the city of Red Deer, but none of those people have brought their water or their sewer or their wastewater, their sidewalks or their street lamps or any of that infrastructure. So it's not just dealing with the population. That's a massive new required investment in infrastructure. And
absolutely. I shared some numbers. 200,000 people mean... 100,000 people mean 40,000 new households accessing municipal services, and they need to feel safe in our city, so we have to invest in police, in public transit, and safety of public transit. We need to invest in, community services like rec centers, fire halls, and others. So I think those people consume services that currently, that is why it's so important that we continue to invest in those core services. Just to give you kind of the taste of that growth. I shared this number, which people came to me afterwards saying, wow, 65,000 new vehicles in the city of Edmonton.
65,000 new vehicles in the last 2 years?
Last 2 years. Just imagine, just think about that. That's you can fill the Western Mental Mall, the biggest parking lot, 3.25 times. With that number of vehicles. That's how much growth we are experiencing in our city. And on the good side, we had seen 13% growth in new businesses incorporating in Edmonton because of that population growth and the way city and others are supporting business investment in our city. So things are looking up from my perspective. We have seen public transit ridership recover. We have seen 28% growth at the international airport for passenger volume. We're seeing more direct flights to major hubs in North America, such as Seattle, Minneapolis, and Atlanta. And we are also seeing improvement in the downtown. We are seeing a reduction in safety, which absolutely more needs to be done.
I think you mean a reduction in crime.
Reduction in crime, and we saw 7% reduction in overall crime in the city, and the downtown is looking more cleaner. We definitely have issues of housing, mental health addiction that we need to continue to work with our partners on. But I think overall we're trending in the right direction.
It's interesting because you drop some of these numbers and they are impressive. When you start talking about 100,000 new Edmontonians over 2 years, what is it? 13? What did you say? 1,300 new businesses or 13,000 new businesses?
13% new. 13% growth in new business being incorporated.
That's a healthy sounding number to me. I'm going to go over to you, Doug, in a second. The Chamber's got the business angle covered on this, and that is, it's the general purpose of the Chamber presenting the State of the City address. I mean, let me just say, at least there's a ton of members of the business community in the room. Yeah. Now, you didn't speak exclusively to business. Your address, and we'll get into it through this roundtable, covered a lot of ground. Mm-hmm. But some of the numbers that you're dropping, I kind of had to sit there and think about some of the comments that I've made in front of this microphone, to be honest with you. Like when you talked, I'd like to hone in, for example, on transit ridership. Yep. Because I've maybe been one of the number one enemies of Edmonton's public transit, to be honest with you. Not trying to be a jerk, but I just call it how I see it. Mm-hmm. And I recognize privilege in statements like this, but I've just been like, I'm not taking public transit. I'm not riding public transit. But because I see the anecdotal circumstances. Yes. I see a violent incident at a train station, or I hear somebody talking about what they saw when they were on the bus. But the numbers that you presented to that room were actually pretty encouraging for supporters of public transit. There's evidence that the investment is paying off.
Yes, investments are paying off. Also, the safety investments are making public transit more safer. It is not to the level where we like to see and where it was before the pandemic, but it's becoming more safer now than it was, say 1 year ago. 28% growth in the ridership that we have experienced from 2022 to 2023, and Edmonton Transit was the first transit facility in Canada to actually recover from the COVID faster than any other, and our ridership was back to pre-pandemic levels on the bus side of things.
What do you think was the secret sauce there? Why was Edmonton leading the nation in that?
I think first that we reorganized our transit system to focusing more on high frequency routes, so that allowed people the predictability and the reliability that people need. And then this council really showed leadership by investing in public transit. We made the on-demand service, which was temporary. We made that permit. That helped 29 communities have access to service on a regular basis. Then we added another 150,000 hours of new bus service to catch up with frequency, as well as add more service and non-peak and peak service as well. So that's why we're seeing that growth, and that's why we're seeing the people are coming back to public transit. We have a long way to go on the safety yet, but we are heading in the right direction.
What was something that Mayor said, either at the State of the City or that has already said in our first 5-10 minutes here, that's kind of grabbing your attention through the lens of what you do, steering the Edmonton Chamber?
Well, I'm going to dive into I don't disagree with any of the statistics, and the statistics show that the city is improving. It's leading in growth, it's leading in economic development, that the safety is improving. The challenge I think the city of Edmonton has right now is that the statistics are showing the improvement, the stories aren't reflecting it, and the way we tell the stories. And I use this example all the time. I grew up in the back of a little 4-seater Cessna. My dad was a pilot, so I was used to turbulence all the time. And the first trip my wife and I took, she's terrified of flying. So we're on the plane, and she wakes me up because I'm sound asleep, and we're bouncing all over the place. And she said, I'm scared, and I told her a statistic. There is a 1 in a million chance that this plane will crash from turbulence. It turns out that did not help her feel better.
Sure.
Right?
So you're saying there's a chance.
Right. The statistics said we were safe. The story didn't say we were safe. And that's the challenge we have. The evidence and the statistics are showing the trends are in the right direction. But we haven't captured this story about what Edmonton is, how it's improving, but also what it's going to be. And I think the thing we need to change now, most importantly, is the story Edmontonians tell about themselves and their own city.
Yeah.
This kind of has been, it feels like this has been an exercise for like 15 or 20 years, right? Like, I go back and I think of some of the different branding exercises that we've seen. I remember that sort of monumental moment when, this is me being sensational, but when workers showed up with crowbars and pried off City of Champions off all of our welcome signs, and I still to this day think that was an absolute bonehead move, to be honest with you. I know that we've had the take a risk, it's the most Edmonton thing you can do. We've had Make It Edmonton, we've had Still in Edmonton, we've had all these different things. This is good. I mean, a lot of the people that dreamed up and came up with these campaigns are smarter than me. Some of them are personal friends of mine. They know what they're doing in branding. Is that a normal thing, though, for a city to be constantly trying to find a way to properly brand itself, or is this a uniquely Edmonton problem?
Well, I don't know, but I think as a municipality, sometimes as a community, I would say, as a community, sometimes because we're so humble, and the Edmonton have a big city feel, but also it's a kind of little town feel as well.
It's like Reno. It's like the biggest little city in the world.
I think there's a sense of maybe sometimes I feel that we always look for comparisons to other municipalities and other cities and other communities, which is not helpful in my mind. We have our own unique characteristics. This city is a city where people help each other. I came to this city with nothing. All I had was love and support of my brother and my sister-in-law. Couldn't speak the language. I struggled a lot in my early days, faced a lot of racism and discrimination. And I within 40 years, the things I've been able to do in this community, being from nobody to the mayor of this city, is a phenomenal thing. And that doesn't happen in every community, and that is what that's how I see Edmonton. That's how I see Edmonton's identity as a community where we lift each other up, where we help each other and build their potential to be successful.
Do you still experience racism in the city's top political job?
Oh, absolutely. Racism is a reality in every community, and I think where we differ is that we take it head on. We try to tackle it, and this council has put so many resources. We are committed to our reconciliation with the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities. We are working with the Black communities to end racism in our city and other communities as well, right? So I think recognizing the reality of things, but this is a community that actually recognizes them and then take action.
Who's it up to tell these stories?
Well, I think it might be up to the chamber. I honestly, I'm going to disagree with the mayor about Edmonton being this welcoming, friendly, helpful, uplifting city. I think that's more a reflection of the circles that we have around us than it is about the entire city. Because I haven't been to a single community in North America where the first thing they say is it's our people that are different. Everyone says their people are different. Everyone says they're helpful, or they say they're not. We're missing the point on actually capturing what makes Edmonton stand out and unique. Some incredible attributes, like the largest green canopy in River Valley in North America, that I think we have. The most blue, we're one of the most blue collar cities in Canada, and I've said that to a few people, talk to them, and they almost look like, oh, we don't want to be that, and I don't know why. Every industry, every commercial development needs employees. We should be proud that we're a blue collar city.
100%.
We should be proud that, I'm not going to name any other cities, but you go to other cities.
Do it. Name some other. Let's go.
Well,
come on, it's real talk.
It seems to me in Calgary that I've been to meetings and everyone puts their keys on the table so you can see if you drive a Bentley or a Mercedes or a Beamer. And yet in Edmonton, I've been to meetings and I see a student representative sitting across from a billionaire, and they have a conversation like there's no status. That's something that helps us stand out. And I think we need to capture those elements. And to me, I don't think it's the responsibility of the city. They manage the municipal corporation. I think the business community, and I've said this many times, needs to step up and take some ownership, not just of the economics and the business side, but also participate in helping to resolve some of the social issues. Because social issues and economic issues go hand in hand. You don't get one without addressing the other. And I feel there's an opportunity for the business community to step up and say, what is Edmonton's brand to the rest of the world? We need a story. And I agree with you, Ryan. When we took the City of Champions off, our brand now is City of Edmonton. There's no nothing. And I think it's time now, with the statistics showing that we're trending, we've got this incredible growth, that it's time that we step up and create a true brand, not platitudes.
Did you know that right now on eBay, you can buy a replacement key fob for a Bentley for just $79.99 US?
I'm going to get one of those for my next meeting.
This could be the best investment in your reputation that you ever make. I want to talk to you about the relationship with the province. I want to talk about the contentious bills 18 and 20. I want to talk about concerns that the municipalities, including Edmonton, may not be able to work with the province, or for that matter, may not be able to properly work with the feds. Obviously, big housing announcement back in February with your former boss, the Prime Minister, here in town. But why don't we talk about housing, because that's an issue. For some people, I think bills 18 and 20, when we start talking about government legislation, I never blame a person when their eyes kind of glaze over and they don't feel like it's directly relevant today to them. But for tens or hundreds of thousands of people, the housing crunch is very relevant every single day. So 100,000 people who we want to welcome with open arms over the past couple of years has done what to the city's housing stock? What's your assessment of where it's at right now? And is Edmonton outpacing other municipalities? Is Edmonton behind the eight ball? Like, where is Edmonton right now on the affordability and housing crisis?
Yeah, I think when it comes to market affordability, we have that market affordability, and we do much, much better than any community in Canada. We have overhauled our zoning regulations to make it more easy for people to build market housing. We reduced a lot of red tape. I shared a number that saved close to $5 million for in the permitting and the time saved in building housing. I think where we struggle, and this is a real struggle, I think we don't have enough non-market housing. Edmonton has the lowest non-market housing compared to any other city in Canada.
Is non-market? Sorry, I don't understand. Is
So
non-market, is that like
housing
affordable
is
housing? what you might call it?
subsidized housing.
Yes.
People who are living, struggling with poverty and have low incomes, and they cannot afford to pay market rent. So they're paying actually much more than 30%. That is kind of the normal for that a household should pay for shelter. I think that's where the struggles are. That's where we need to focus. That's why, having access from funding from the federal government and the provincial government and cities stepping up, we are investing close to $183 million in housing during the last budget that we have approved, along with making land available, making it permitting much easier. So housing is. Housing market housing affordability has been our advantage, and we will maintain that advantage. But we need to look at how we provide support to those who are struggling the most, which is investing more in non-market housing.
Here's an interesting comment from Mark Doran of the Polluter Pay Federation. It says, when I was young, living in Edmonton, I couldn't wait to take an overseas job. I couldn't wait to get out of Edmonton. It didn't take me long overseas to conclude that Edmonton is the best city in the world. There you go. Maybe your office, Doug, can bring on Mark to write some testimonials for the website. We're hanging out with Doug Griffiths, President and CEO of the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce, and of course, His Worship, Amarjeet Sohi, the Mayor of Edmonton. Back in 90 seconds to talk about, Seventh Pilot wants me to ask you about Edmonton's homeless problem. Obviously, a big federal cash infusion for that King Thunderbird Center, which has been mired in controversy with the Cates Group, by the way. That's one of the most mind-boggling stories that we've been keeping an eye on. Have to ask you about a 9% tax increase, what that's done, not just to the average citizen, but what it's done to business confidence and the like. Obviously, want to talk to you about some of the other things. I want to ask you if you think a high-speed rail train between Edmonton and Calgary would kill Edmonton's International Airport. I'm curious for the mayor's take on that. This episode is happening with the support of partners like our friends at Complete Care Restoration, and I just want to say every single episode right now that our thoughts are with Albertans and our fellow Canadians, including in Manitoba. Look what's happening there, that are being displaced by wildfire right now. The fact of the matter is, some of you are going to experience a gut punch, and we shout out those that are working on these wildfires, those that are coordinating evacuations. We're thinking about you. If you do need to reach out to somebody that can help rebuild your peace of mind, if you need to connect with somebody that's been there before, that understands how much this sucks, but understands how to get you back in business, back into your home, don't forget Complete Care Restoration. We've worked with them. We've hired them. They built our studio. I've seen their professionalism. Heaven forbid if disaster strikes, don't forget CompleteCareRestoration.ca. If you're going to be spending this May-long weekend in your garden, if you're going to be getting it going, we want to let you know that the Friesen Brothers Garden Centers are now open. You can check them out online at friesen.com. That's FRESON.com/garden center to check out more about their offerings. You know what one of the coolest parts about this is that the majority of the plants that you're going to find, the flowers as well, in the Friesen Brothers Garden Centers have been grown right here in Alberta. That means they're perfectly suited for this climate. You know, their peat moss is even from Alberta. How cool is that? Friesen Brothers loves Alberta plants. They love working with Alberta suppliers. You can check out, there's a really great video introducing you to some of their suppliers at friesen.com/garden center. If you're underemployed or unemployed, but you know for a fact you have something to give to a young, dynamic, growing company, if you have any experience as an electrician, as an apprentice, as a salesperson, as an office manager, working in HR, you name it, Kubi Energy wants to hear from you. You know, they're proudly headquartered out of Edmonton. This is one of Canada's great success stories. They're already Western Canada's busiest solar installer, and they're just getting started. A new office in Calgary, a new office in Lethbridge, a beautiful office in Kamloops. Kubi's providing solar energy solutions to power your life. Mayor, they're the ones that put that big solar installation on the Edmonton Convention Center. How cool is that? You can check out the careers link at kubienergy.ca. If your investment in your home is going to be on the inside, if you're looking to get decluttered and organized for good, do what Barbara did. We got a great email from her earlier this week. She didn't think she could afford California closets. That's what she told us straight up. But imagine her surprise when she took our suggestion, went for that free design consultation. She got the quote after she saw the 3D rendering of the project. Blew her mind, she told us. And California Closets came in with the most reasonable quote. So she hired them. They're doing the install right now. And of course, it all comes with a lifetime guarantee. She said, I never thought I'd have California Closets in my home. She is thrilled. You can do the same thing. Check out that free consultation. What an opportunity at californiaclosets.ca. Seventh point. Oh, did you have something you wanted to? You looked like you were ready to go. You were like you're like in the starter block.
No, I was,
at the 100 meters.
Preparing for your next question.
Okay, good stuff. Well, Seventh Pilot, we've got a great YouTube live chat. It moves fast. I try to stay on top of it. And Seventh Pilot in here says, please ask the mayor about Edmonton's homeless problem. I mean, that's kind of a general question, but here we are talking about the state of the city. What's your assessment of where the issue of people experiencing homelessness is now, and the path and the plan?
This is an issue that has kept me awake many, many nights, because we have seen our houseless population doubled during the COVID, and continues to increase because we lack appropriate support systems for people who struggle with poverty, people who struggle with mental health or addictions, and we don't have enough housing, particularly supportive housing with wraparound services. Even though ending houselessness is not a direct responsibility of the municipality, but it falls on us to ensure that we are doing what we can, working with our provincial and federal partners, and they're stepping up. And I'll give credit to Minister Nixon for creating 1,700 shelters in Edmonton that are open 24 hours, 7 days a week, and they have some services available. That capacity went from 700 shelters to 1,700 shelters, so that will help. But shelters are not the solution. They're temporary intervention when people are struggling, and we need to build more housing, and the province is stepping up, federal government is stepping up. But the point I try to make with Mr. Fraser and with Minister Nixon is that the needs that we're facing in Edmonton are unique, because we are a hub for Northern Alberta and many other municipalities surrounding us. So, and many of those northern communities are also very poor. They don't have the resources to keep people in their communities. So when people come to Edmonton, they fall through the cracks. And we are also a health hub. We're also a health hub in a way that many people who come to access services, you'll hear that from doctors at the Royal Oaks Hospital. Many people who come to our city, when they don't have a proper place to go back to, they fall through the crack and they end up on the street. That's a unique characteristic that Calgary doesn't face, for example. We also have a high concentration of correctional facilities in Edmonton, largest concentration anywhere in Western Canada. So when people get released from prison, for example, if they don't have proper housing in place or integration into the community, they fall through the cracks and they end up on the street, not only hurting themselves, but also causing a lot of harm to the community. And I can point to a number of cases where we have seen violent crime take place, and many of those people were actually released from prisons, whether they have done their time, whether they are released on parole or bail. And because they didn't have the system in place to help them, and they end up on the street, cause a lot of harm. So this is a very big, serious issue that we have, and we need partners to step up. And I really appreciate Doug's leadership on this, because when Doug took on this role, he convened a group of business leaders to brainstorm some ideas, and out of that actually came some good ideas that we need to start implementing. And I created this task force now on housing and houselessness, and we're going to explore how we can implement those community-based solutions to make a difference in people's lives.
That was an announcement that you made at the State of the City address. You're on that task force, aren't you?
Yeah, I am, and it's a very diverse task force. It's going to be good.
Yeah, well, you've got developers on the task force. You've got social services and agencies on the task force, elected officials. Obviously, it makes sense. So
business community.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, like, not lost in all this. I mean, like, when you talk about wealth creation, when you talk about employers, when you talk about the tax base, a big part of that is the business community. What's your assessment if we were doing like the CEO's State of the City, the Chamber CEO's State of the City? Where's and I'm about to ask you like the most broad question. Where's the business community at? I bet some businesses are absolutely booming right now, and I bet some are either struggling or have seen over the past 3 or 4 years disruption that ultimately led to the demise of their baby, so to speak.
Yeah. It is all over the place. That's one of the things the Chamber is going to be working on is to collect more robust data about the situation with the business community, our members, but beyond that as well, because we've got some that are still struggling post-pandemic, some that have the businesses have closed. We've got some that are hanging on, some that could grow, but we don't have enough. They don't have enough employable people, not enough workforce to help them meet the growing demand, or they're plagued and challenged by the situation downtown, or the brand of the city, or so it's a little all over the map.
What do you, can I dig into the situation downtown specifically? What do you mean?
Well, I mean, so Edmonton does have a unique situation. I completely agree with Mayor Sohi. We've got one of the largest downtowns in Canada. It's still got issues with unhoused, mental health, and some crime. I don't think it's as serious as it used to be. I think it's more petty crime, and it's more, it's
disorder.
And spray painting, and it still makes people feel a little bit unsafe. And yet, I've explored cities all over North America, whether I'm speaking or on holidays, and you go downtown. And if Edmonton, which has incredible potential, I mean, I love the statistic that there are 40 million people in Canada. 90% of Canadians live within 200 miles of the U.S. border. That leaves 4 million people, and 1.6 million of them are here in the Edmonton region. Mm-hmm. Like, we have 40% of the northern population here, and the rest of them are feed into Edmonton. So we have unique challenges, and we have incredible opportunity. But if we're going to elevate ourselves to what Edmonton can be and stop underperforming, it is critical that we address downtown. I've not been to a successful city that doesn't have a robust downtown with energy, with beauty, with restaurants and places to shop and people, and we're still struggling with that. Partly because we have such a big downtown. It's not easily addressed. And I think we need some unique strategic investments from other levels of government as well to help address that, because I don't think the city has, you go to any other city, they have the industrial base, the commercial base, and the residential base. The residential base doesn't pay for itself. But in the city of Edmonton, it is primarily a residential and commercial base. The industrial base tends to move to the other 13 municipalities around
Sturgeon
the fringe.
County.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that makes Edmonton's diverse tax portfolio, it limits it. And that puts Edmonton in a little bit of a disadvantage. And so I agree with the mayor. It is struggling. We're still not pleased with 8.9%.
Yeah. I
mean, nobody is in this situation, but I think the city's hands are a little bit tied if they're going to deliver the same services. So I continue to emphasize that I don't think cuts are the answer. I think maybe getting out of some lines of business would be
I agree with it. I think the raising taxes is never easy, but the way the municipal taxes are structured, we have to adjust taxes every year because our taxes don't grow as the economy grows. For example, provincial revenues through taxes, corporate income, and the royalties grew by, I think, 6 or 7% last year. Our revenue doesn't grow that way. We have to make adjustments. So raising taxes is always the difficult part. But I think this council has to recognize and reckon with some of the past decisions that were made in keeping taxes artificially low. Over the last 10 years, when you go back and you look at property tax increases, they were not kept pace with population growth, and they were not kept pace with inflation. So here we are 10 years later, that we have to increase police funding by 20% because of safety issues. We had to invest additional resources in snow and ice because those resources were reduced. So snow and ice budget has gone up 20%. We had to invest 250,000 hours of new bus service because people were lacking service in existing communities as well as newer communities. Libraries we had to keep open longer. The pools were closed earlier. We have to restore those pool hours and couple that with the reduction on the grant funding that we used to get from the provincial government. Those grants have dried up pretty much. The $1.2 billion that were promised in 2008 under the MSI funding has gone almost half of that, to half. So we have seen that reduction. Then we have also seen inflationary pressures that every other household is facing and businesses are facing on utility cost, on labor cost, on
some big collective bargaining agreements,
all those
obviously.
Things, right? So all those things have added up to this high a level of property tax increase that no one is happy about, but this is something that we needed to do in order to continue to invest in quality public services, sustain those services, and stabilize some of the financial challenges that we had faced. At the same time, we have always looked for efficiencies. This council reduced budget, overall budget, by close to $150 million. But more needs to be done, and look forward to working with the administration on the motion that I made in April to look for different ways of doing things.
Just a quick follow-up question. You'd like to see the city get out of some certain lines of business. What would you like to see the city get out of?
I told them some of the lines of business they should get out. I don't, well, okay, for an example, I hate to do this because it then everyone focuses on that. But I think the city's got 10 or 11 social workers. I don't know. I haven't found anyone who knows much of what they do, if they connect with the province. And it's not even a municipal responsibility to have social workers. So if both levels of government have social workers working on different issues or the same issues that aren't coordinated, maybe that's something we can say, province, that's your responsibility. That's in your mandate. We're going to put this towards filling potholes, or we're going to put this towards beautification downtown.
I think Doug is making a very valid point, and I highlighted that in my letter to the Premier. I identified 9 areas where we feel that municipality should not be in those areas. And we're filling the gap of provincial services. I'll use an example, fire service. Fire service should be funded to fight structural fires or wildfires, not to respond to medical calls. But 70%—
That's all they're doing right now.
70% of the fire service calls are medical calls. They're responding to overdose. They're responding to other medical needs where ambulance doesn't show up, but the fire truck shows up. But those are life-saving interventions.
For sure.
We would not stop doing them because we want to make sure that people get the support they need. But it's costing property owners $28 million every year, which should be funded through income taxes, because healthcare is a provincial responsibility, not a municipal responsibility. But we have to do it because people want us to do it, and we have to do it because people die if we don't do that. I'll give you another example. Before 2019, provincial government used to pay the full cost of accessing municipal services for provincial buildings that exist within the city of Edmonton. So they used to pay 100% share of their property taxes, like any other building owner in the city of Edmonton. But they started reducing that. They went from 100% to 75%. Now it's down to 50%. So we lose $17 million every year that property tax owners have to pick up that cost now to provide those services to municipal buildings. And the cumulative impact of that has been close to $80 million that we lost, the revenue that we used to get from the provincial government, that we get no more. I think that's where the challenges are. We would like to restructure our organization. We would like to stay in our lane. We'll get out of some of the areas that province should be filling in. But for us to get out of their lane and stay in our lane, province needs to step up into their lane and do that work so we can step out.
Okay, so everybody's talking about Bills 18 and 20. We've talked about it a lot on the show. We've understood or sought to understand from different perspectives the implication of this. There's obviously big funding implications. There's the development that would allow the province to essentially yank democratically elected councillors, representatives. Obviously, the demand.
I think I'll give you another example how we can actually reduce pressures on property taxes.
Well, I'm curious to know how you're going to work with the province, how you're going to continue to attempt to work with the feds through all of this, because it seems like more red tape. It seems like more hurdles at a time where funding is obviously, you can't talk about, we'll let this, we'll figure this out over the next 18 or 24 months. We'll figure out the housing crisis or the plan in the next 3 years. You don't have that luxury, obviously.
Yeah, we don't. I know Doug may have, he may have perspective on the federal, provincial, because you were municipal affairs minister. But I can tell you, like my personal relationship with the provincial government is pretty productive. we talk often. I meet with Premier often. We just had a breakfast on Tuesday where we spent an hour and a half talking about Edmonton-related issues, and they want to work with us, and they are sympathetic to some of the things that I have identified in my letter. And
you and the Premier had a 90-minute breakfast this week?
Yeah, on Tuesday. And we talked about the $330 million that is owed to City of Edmonton because Calgary got their support for the arena. We talked about the 9 things that I identified in my letter, how we can work together on, and we also talked about how we can help grow our businesses in our city, and they want to focus on Edmonton, and we want to give them the opportunity to do so and work with us, and they're willing to step up, and in some areas they have stepped up. I talked about shelter capacity. I talked about the support they provide to Homeward Trust on houselessness. But there are structural issues. I think this point need to be recognized. The challenges that we're facing in Edmonton are not caused by one government. These are structural issues that have existed and continue to accumulate over time. And we need to have very serious conversations how we all the downloading that has happened onto municipalities, how we shift that back to the appropriate level of government that they can take on their responsibility, and we can relieve some of the pressures on property taxes.
As the Premier in this United Conservative government, sort of, what do I want to say, asserts itself with this Provincial Priorities Act, the Premier herself, referring to the Get Out of My Backyard Act. I always love these creative names, the No New Pipelines Bill, the federal, when a politician starts to affix a nickname to a bill, it's one that they want to make sure that the public has on its radar. Yeah. What are 18 and 20 doing? I mean, what are these bills? What's the impact on investment? On what are business leaders feeling about this?
Well, I mean, again, I go back as a Chamber of Commerce to me, we need to elevate Edmonton to achieve its full potential. Some of the challenges we have is that we need to, again, I'm going to go maybe reflect a little bit on Calgary. It seems like they make a decision, they're all unified, and so they make an ask and they get what they need. We have a lot of voices that are discoordinated. They're sort of all over the place. We've got great post-secondaries making investments and making asks about future investments. We've got the Arts and Culture District doing the same thing. We've got 104th Street. We've got the DBA. We've got and the city all making asks, and they're not coordinated to make this to create sort of a brand and decide what our priorities are. And so it makes it a challenge for us to get more funding. And I think the challenge with, and that's getting the right funding to rebuild downtown and elevate the city is critical to the economy. That's my perspective. We need to tell our story better and have a focused agenda so that we can grow our economy. It's growing, I think, accidentally because people are coming here because we have great affordable housing, but I don't think we're actually marketing the city appropriately. So when we all get coordinated and focused and we can start to make some coordinated asks, my concern about Bill 18 is that if the feds say, that's a great idea, we're going to put some money towards that, there's a pile of red tape to go through now with an approval process with the provincial government potentially that could hinder or slow down some of that key strategic investment we need to make this city reach its potential, and that's concerning to me.
Bill 18, Ryan, is a very damaging piece of legislation. It will stifle economic growth in our city. It will delay infrastructure projects that are so essential for the movement of goods, services, and people. It will create so much red tape. I was a federal minister dealing with the province of Quebec, right, and can tell you the projects delayed in the province cost tons of more money if there was a better way of working and streamlining some of those processes. If government of Alberta wants to have the same arrangement with federal government that province of Quebec have, I think that's going to hurt our economy.
These bills that we're discussing also open the door for political parties at the municipal level. Have you been paying any attention to this TAPYEG, this upstart party in Edmonton? We talked to the founders of it a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks ago, on their launch day.
Right.
So they're sort of like coy right now about what they're all about. They've not named like a candidate for mayor. They have these ward champions, they're calling them. They didn't tell us whether or not these are going to be the nominees in those wards. So there's still lots to be determined, but they have put, if you check out tapyeg.ca, they put a platform out there. I would imagine they'll develop something in more fulsome fashion to come. But they're talking in terms of we will form government at City Hall. Jeffrey Hansen Carlson, one of the founders, says we will win at least 7 wards. We will form government. And they're promising a tax cut in the first 100 days in government. They say they'll reduce residential taxes from 0.85% to 0.68% of property value. That would represent about a 20% tax cut of residential taxes. And they say non-residential taxes will reduce from 2.2% to 1.8% of property value, which would reduce those taxes by about 18.5%. Now, I'm always curious to know when you're putting forth a 20% residential tax cut or a 19% non-residential tax cut, what the implications are, or how much money that would represent, or how you would get to that point, like how the city could manage a bottom line absorbing a tax cut like that.
Yeah.
What would you be talking about to put a 20% tax cut in front of Edmontonians?
Yeah, I know election is 15 months away. What I would encourage everyone listening to your show is that if they have ideas how we can reduce expenditures, please share those with us, because we've been seeking those ideas from business community and everyone else, and Doug and others have shared some ideas. We were able to look at them, explore them, so we were actually able to implement some of those ideas. So anyone who have ideas to reduce expenditures, please share those with us, and there'll be healthy debate during the election as well. So I would also say, Ryan, that introduction of political parties in municipal affairs it's a healthy thing to do. Municipal issues.
You said you think it's a healthy
it's
thing?
not.
Oh,
it's
okay.
not. It's
Okay.
not a healthy thing to do, because municipal issues are not partisan issues. They're not ideological issues. Everyone wants to feel safe in our community. We've got to fill potholes. We got to run buses on time. We got to make sure that your garbage is collected on time, that we have recreation centers open for people to enjoy and have a healthy living. We want to make sure libraries are open. None of those issues are ideological or partisan. And having partisanship issued into those discussions, I think, going to hinder our ability to have a healthy dialogue. I may end up actually hindering our ability to continue to provide those quality public services. So it's not needed in municipal elections, and but it seems like that'll be the reality if Bill 20 passes. I hope it doesn't. But
of course it will.
It will, but that we also look forward to engaging with Minister McIver on the development of the regulations around it, right? Because there's so many bad parts of Bill 20 that we need to. I wish they had talked to us earlier on. But we'll try to make the best of it. But I hope they scrap it, don't pass it, work with us, and figure out what needs to be fixed, and we will work with them to fix that.
As mentioned, like, you have done that job. You were the Minister of Municipal Affairs. You held the job when half of Alberta was underwater in the floods. I think it was 2013. I'll never forget that. I don't think anybody will that was here. Obviously, you won't forget it. Could you see? I think was it Premier Redford that named you Minister of Municipal Affairs? Correct. Could you see her or another Conservative premier of that vintage? Klein, Stelmach, Redford, Hancock, of that vintage.
All the ones I served under. I served under a lot.
But could you? Yeah, it was kind of an interesting turnover, wasn't it? We had Ernest Manning forever. We had and then we kind of had this run of none of them really. Somebody told me a stat the other day that kind of blew my mind when you actually sit and think of it. The longest serving Alberta premier in like the last 25 years is Rachel Notley. Like no other premier has really served a full term. It's kind of wild, actually.
It's been a lot of change.
It's been a lot of change. Could you see another Conservative premier, or was there any talk around the cabinet table of something similar to like a Bill 18 or a Bill 20, or is this something new under this government?
Yeah, in my 13 years as an MLA, I never heard this sort of conversation. I mean, there was always the Bill 18 is the province pushing back and saying, we have our own jurisdiction, don't interfere.
Yeah.
Bill 20 is the province saying, hey, municipalities, you're a creature of the province. You're not in the Constitution. We have a law that says you exist, and we could, you exist because of us. But I've never heard that in my 13 years. I can't recall ever reading anything, and I've read a lot of history about the Alberta legislature, ever having that sort of discussion. And I still, I'm going to say that I know cabinet minutes are confidential, so in the legislation it essentially says that the cabinet can kick someone out of city council or a town council, and that has to be confidential, but they would still explain it. I can't see that happening a lot. I think I have a little more concern about the potential for a cabinet to also overturn or change bylaws or policies that any municipality has, to say, no, you're not doing that anymore. Like the province could technically say the plastics bylaw is gone in the city of Edmonton, which some people might like, or they could also say no more bike trails, which some people won't like. So the concern for me is creating a battle between the municipalities and the province, and the investment it could potentially chase away because of the uncertainty that's
That was
created.
what I wanted to ask you about, is like what this does. It was interesting, to see this what, about $2.4 billion, it was Capital Powers, wasn't it? The Genesee carbon capture and storage project shelved for now, and they were talking about some of the uncertainty around legislation. They weren't kind of sure, and that's like, to be honest, I mean, I'm about to talk about Pathways Alliance here in just a second. Like a big part of what Alberta's doing on climate action, or at least what the message is to the rest of the country and to the rest of the world, is that Alberta is taking climate change seriously. Alberta's taking emissions seriously. So it's a tough look when Capital Power says we're out on carbon capture and storage because of a regulatory regime or because of perceived uncertainty. At the same time, I'm not going to lie, we got a ton of friends that are entrepreneurs, business owners, most of them conservatives, and I think a lot of them are, quite frankly, sorry, Mayor, like they're happy to see Danielle Smith and the Conservative government assert itself. They perceive that you need to have more conservative-friendly legislation, right?
That's the problem. And I understand them. They're like, oh, great, Premier Smith and her cabinet can take care of this. But what if it's not Premier Smith in the cabinet and it's a political party they don't like? Then they won't like it. And it's the same challenge we have in the United States. And this drives me nuts. I mean, Donald Trump says I should be immune from everything, but Joe Biden is a criminal for the decisions he's making in office. You don't get to say, yeah, I agree with Trump, I disagree with Biden. Whatever rules you put in place for leadership are going to apply to everybody. So you might like that they're in power, but if you don't like the people in power, then you won't like it. Maybe you should reconsider whether or not you support the legislation.
I did think for a minute, Ryan, that as mayor, me sitting in the chamber, thinking about making a decision, but the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, will province come in and overturn this decision?
Of course.
Like, what kind of healthy dialogue I'm going to have with my council colleagues when I'm worried about, we recently passed our clean energy retrofit program, where we're going to provide upfront support to business owners as well as homeowners to retrofit their buildings, which they will pay back through their property taxes. Is a very creative way of supporting climate change, local economy, jobs, and doesn't cost taxpayers any money, right? But that had to go through a bylaw. We passed it. Just think for a minute. I was sitting in the chamber thinking, oh my God, what happens if Premier or a cabinet minister doesn't like that? Will they overturn this? I know they're telling us that they will only use these powers sparingly, right? But it's a chill. It creates a chill in the decision making at a local level.
It also, I want to go back to take an average Edmontonian, the ones that you said were supporting, happy about this. Premier Smith and her cabinet can make a decision. Conservative government, and maybe they don't like city council because they're too left, so they like the Conservatives overriding. But switch it, and suddenly we have maybe the New Democrats in power again, and a Conservative municipal government in Edmonton, and then they override something, and they're saying, hey, our government, our local people made a decision. You can't have it both ways. If you pass this legislation, it means anyone in that power position will be able to overturn it, and that's what I think the concern should be about.
I'm not trying to like oversimplify an issue, but across the board on issues, especially involving politics, I always try to think, what if the other guys did it?
Yeah.
Right? And I saw that. I wish I could attribute who it was in the live chat, but somebody earlier in this episode said, imagine if Rachel Notley would have rolled out Bills 18 and 20, people's heads would have exploded.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, that's just something to think about for the audience, and I think that's fair commentary, obviously.
But we're accountable to people. Like, I'm elected by Edmontonians, and if Edmontonians don't like what I'm doing, they have a choice if I run again that they won't have to vote for me. I think that accountability already exists in the system, and system works really well. So not everyone agrees with the decision that we make, But if someone who disagrees, now they can go to the province and say, province, overturn locally elected members of council's decision because I personally don't like that decision, or a group of people don't like that decision. I think that really undermines local democracy and the ability of local people to hold locally elected people accountable.
Because the show's been around for like 3.5 years now, I start to get to know some of our regulars, some of our real OGs, and Keith is one of those. I happen to know that Keith is a restaurateur. He's an entrepreneur in Claire's home, and he reportedly, and I'm not going to say reportedly because he actually drove a pan of cinnamon buns up to Edmonton, if you can believe it. This guy might make the best cinnamon buns in Western Canada. But he's got a question for you, Doug, and I'd be curious for your take on it, Mayor, as well. And I don't know much about this. He says, can you ask Doug about the possibility of the province pushing for towns under 5,000 to amalgamate into MDs or into county management? There's been some interesting developments like Hinton. Several years ago. Hinton basically, I just really feel for the people there. It took a real toll on the real estate market and everything else, but it basically like rolled into I'm out of my depth talking about the specifics of it. Is that something that's on your radar at all right now?
Well, it's always been on my radar, the viability of the municipalities. And, I have a whole presentation called Collaboration, Cooperation, and the Future of Communities. And
is that part of your 13 ways?
It's chapter 11, but it's a whole nother presentation because there are so many communities that just refuse to work together. They treat their neighbor municipalities like they're the enemy. And I was at an event, and it was two towns in the county, and we were working on a regional economic development strategy, and someone from the county stood up and said, Doug, you say we're friends, we have to work together, but those people in town want our taxes for their sidewalks and for their light posts and for their swimming pool. They're not our friends, they're the enemy. And another guy from the county stood up and looked at him and said, but your mom lives in town. So I had the nickname of the presentation is I've seen the enemy, and it's my mom. It's weird that we find the neighboring municipalities enemies. I don't think there are any plans by the province to force any kind of amalgamation, as like what happened in Manitoba, like what happened in Ontario. And I still think it needs to happen willingly, that they find ways to work together, but I don't think it's on the province's radar.
The Premier is very bold on the future of rail in the province, or at least that's what she's telling people in Alberta, including the potential for a rail line, potentially high-speed rail line between Edmonton and Calgary. I can think of all kinds of reasons why it would make sense, and I can think of some reasons how it might actually hurt Alberta, including the capital city. I think it would really hurt Edmonton's airport. I think more people would access more direct flights in Calgary, and the more people that took a 40-minute high-speed train to Calgary, the fewer flights that Edmonton would get. How significant is that to you or your business? How much is this on your radar at City Hall?
What I understand, Ryan, is that their first priority would be to connect airports to downtown core. Here in our case to downtown Edmonton, and in Calgary's case downtown to Calgary. So that's why I understand where the
no-brainer.
Right. I think that makes sense. Absolutely makes sense, and that will take probably decades to do so. Right. So I don't want to speculate on.
Can I tell you a quick story in 2 sentences? Interrupting the mayor. Jeez. I went to Vancouver. I worked at.
Won't be the first time.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I've been interrupting you for years. Hosted a gala event, a fundraiser in Vancouver last weekend. Yeah. You know how much I landed at YVR?
Yeah.
I took an $8 train, the Canada line, to 2 blocks from my hotel. Yeah. And then to take that train back to the airport on a Sunday morning, $3, $11 all in to go from the airport to my downtown hotel back. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why it makes sense to connect airports to cities and downtowns, and that's why we're very supportive of that. Right. Beyond that, we will have conversations when that becomes a reality, but you're talking about decades in my mind about that kind of. So I don't want to speculate, but I hope that any plan for connecting Calgary and Edmonton will involve a lot of conversations with Edmonton Airport and others as well, right? Because it could potentially impact our businesses, and I don't think there will be intent to impact our businesses, but I think conversation will be helpful.
Travis says rail is what the movie business would call, is it a MacGuffin? It's a nothing burger distraction. That from Travis, who doesn't foresee this actually coming to fruition.
Well, I think he makes a good point, because we have very real pressing issues that we're facing today, and we need to tackle those head on, and those require a lot of effort and time, and as well as ongoing commitment from everyone else that we need to work on together on, whether it's houselessness issues. We have a drug poisoning crisis in our city. Every day people die because of they don't have access to treatment facilities, so they don't have access to recovery beds, or they don't have interventions like safe supply, not safe supply. I mean where harm reduction and others, right? So I think there's ways we can help them. I think those are pressing issues that we need to continue to work on, as well as think about the future of the province too. Yeah.
I happen to know that your schedule is jammed this morning, and we've hit our time. So I want to thank both of you for availability. But I don't want to wrap this roundtable. We always like to do this on our Friday episodes, with kind of giving you like a chance for like a closing thought, something to chew on, something for people to ruminate on over the weekend. Shout out to Acute Awareness, who let us know that they're listening to this live streaming as they're on a road trip out to Ontario, so they'll have lots of time to think about what you leave them with. Why don't we go with you first, Doug, President and CEO of the Alberta Chamber of Commerce.
Great. Well, I've had folks that say we need to be more critical of the city. I've had folks say we're too critical of the city. We're going to be frank, just like the mayor is with the province, about the challenges we see, but we're not going to be critics all of the time. And I mean it when I say that the chamber, we're going to actively, because I think we need to, lead the charge in helping to restore a new brand for Edmonton, a new story that's uplifting, that gets people excited and motivated or inspired about the potential of the city, because it is high time that the city of Edmonton quit underachieving. It's time to reach our full potential. The province needs it. It needs Calgary to be Calgary and Edmonton to be Edmonton, and for us to both grow and be successful. Or frankly, the province will never get their high-speed train between anywhere, because where are you going to take a high-speed train to if we're not successful? So, and we're going to help lead the charge on that. And I encourage everyone out there who's ruminating to start to talk about what Edmonton can be instead of what's wrong with Edmonton, because we have a lot to build on.
Thanks, Doug. Last word to you, Mayor.
I firmly believe, Ryan, that key to success is collaboration. And we collaborate with the business leaders, with Chamber, with community leagues, and other community organizations and Edmontonians. I think through that collaboration, we are investing back in core services that Edmontonians rely on, whether it's investing more in police, fire service, whether it's investing more in bus service or snow and ice and other services that has been under, and those services so critical for economic growth, for success of people to be moving around in our city and enjoy the quality of life that we offer, and we will continue to do that. I'm so proud of my council colleagues that they are really stepping up in a way that we are catching up on those underinvestments, and we are making very tough decisions, and we will continue to do so. But we will only we will only be successful if Edmontonians are coming along in those decisions, and that's why ongoing collaboration with various stakeholders is so important, including the provincial government and the federal government.
Thanks for doing this.
Yep.
It's good to see you as always. That's Edmonton's Mayor Amarjeet Sohi, Chamber CEO Doug Griffiths. If you want to learn more about what Doug and his team are doing, check out edmontonchamber.com. They've got some events coming up. You can also learn more about their advocacy, and you can join Doug and I and a whole bunch of others at their big golf tournament coming up in September. Okay, well, you guys got to get out of here, because I'm about to fire up my flamethrower here, and it's about to get loud in the Real Talk studio. That's Amarjeet Sohi, Mayor of Edmonton, and of course Doug Griffiths. If you're just tuning in on the Mixler live streaming audio app presented by California Closets, I mentioned carbon capture and storage. If you're a regular on the show, you already know about Pathways Alliance. This is a collaboration between the 6 largest companies in Alberta's oil sands, working with the province, working with the federal government, on a proposed carbon capture and storage network that's going to reduce emissions out of the oil sands, a path to reach net zero emissions from operations. This is a plan to obviously give the world what it's looking for. Global energy demand, as it changes, as it evolves, is looking for responsibly produced energy. And Alberta needs to be a leader there. Pathways Alliance knows that. And that's why they're developing this plan to reduce emissions, preserve existing jobs, and create new ones. You can learn more by checking out pathwaysalliance.ca. You know, if you're new to this program and you haven't heard me talking about Athabasca University, I try to do my best to cover the undergrad degrees they have and the Athabasca University Advantage and how it's one of Canada's top research post-secondaries. But I find that there's so much to talk about with AU. Like, I've not spent a lot of time talking about the MBA. at Athabasca University, but if you look at the numbers, you take a look at what alumni of AU say, 92% in a job related to their field of study, 94% satisfied with the quality of their education. If you're looking to level up, you want to take your business career even further with an MBA, don't delay. Check out the AU Advantage today at athabascau.ca. And a quick shout out to our friends at Alberta Views magazine. You heard Amber Bracken on this show just a few days ago talking about her incredible photo essay in the newest issue. That's the May issue of Alberta Views. The cover story on that, Our Lobbyist Premier. You can read it online. You can check out Amber's photo essay and more at albertaviews.ca. Here's what I'm looking for you to do is to support independent journalism by subscribing to a year of Alberta Views delivered to your door for $20. That's right, $20. What's that, Johnny? Like 3 caramel macchiatos? Maybe just 2 caramel macchiatos? I don't know. It's been a while. The promo code AVRJ, that's Alberta Views Ryan Jesperson, AVRJ knocks 50% off an annual subscription to Alberta Views at albertaviews.ca. You know, you and I show up every single day and we say we want to learn at least one thing every show. And I think that I appreciated Daniel's comment in the chat. He says, what a fantastic roundtable. But Travis, talking about movie making technique, the McGuffin. Have you ever heard about this before?
Yeah, Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that was the same, the shiny suitcase. I'm Googling as we speak. I mean, I'm obviously
it's
giving
a bright,
full attention.
Shiny item to get your mind off of the real plot.
Apparently, Alfred Hitchcock. Oh my gosh. I'm having a hard time with names this week. But was big on this. They say that there's a MacGuffin in Harry Potter as well. The MacGuffin in Harry Potter, the Philosopher's Stone. The magical stone every wizard wants because it has special powers. But they say Harry and his friends have to collect clues, take action in order to find the Philosopher's Stone before... I'm allowed to say this next word? I don't think you're supposed to say Voldemort out loud, but I did. Voldemort does and uses it for evil. There's another MacGuffin. I think Macbeth is the one you're really not supposed to say, especially when you work in media, but what are you going to do about it? So, James says, Caramel Macchiato, the currency of Real Talk Ryan Jesperson. That is. It's been years. That used to be one of the all-time, I worked as a barista for a period of time, my friends.
Caramel macchiato. 8,000 calories and 40 grams of sugar.
It's not too bad if you go half sweet. I like to go half sweet, extra hot caramel macchiato. Yeah. And you know what? Macchiato, the word macchiato in Italian, it means marked.
Oh.
And so the reason why they call it a caramel macchiato is because it's different than a latte and a cappuccino. You're learning something here, friends. Instead of the espresso going in first and then the milk and the foam to follow, a caramel macchiato is marked on the top with the espresso going in after the milk has been poured. So there you go.
Enough of the caramel McMuffin. Let's get to what the plot is here.
Yeah. Every week, we wrap things up by firing up our flamethrowers by reading real emails to talk@ryanjesperson.com, courtesy of our amazing friends at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. This is where you bring the heat. This is where you let us know your hot takes, courtesy of the DQs in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. And how about this one from KP, who says, Jespo, as you recall, the Edmonton police broke up that encampment at the University of Alberta. People are up in arms. People who disagree are saying it wouldn't fly if it was a right-wing protest, comparing it to the Freedom Convoy. Not like the Freedom Convoy was bigger, legal, and required the Emergency Act to clear it. But the biggest difference is, brace yourself, one is against the government on public property. The other is supporting terrorists and calling for the active genocide of Jewish people on private property. Your tuition doesn't mean you own a part of the university or that it owes you anything. I don't know about you, but the morning that the clips came in of Edmonton police stuffing a terrorist protester's face with a riot shield made my coffee that much sweeter. Woo, says KP. I didn't even need to order a double-double or a caramel macchiato. I will always be pro-protest, says KP. Heck, I've done it. But supporting terrorists like Hamas and the PLO and those who support terrorists like Iran and Turks and Qataris who call for the active destruction of a country, the destruction of a race of people who carve out a place that never existed. Woo, says KP. I hope you get deported or go to Gaza to fight for your brothers and sisters. From the river to the sea, Israel will be free from genocidal terrorists who claim to have given Hitler the idea for the Holocaust. And if you don't think those are who you're supporting, just understand you need to do more research. Have a great long weekend, everybody. From KP, who, well, that's Flamethrower for sure. How about this one from Jeff, who says, I'm late to the party on this one, Jespo, but when you were asking Adler if the left killed comedy, I was quoting Jerry Seinfeld, he says Adler completely missed the whole fucking point. Seinfeld's had it on easy mode for so long that any pushback is like the end of the world to him. There's plenty of comics that can navigate tougher subjects without whining like babies. How about Bill Burr? When Bill Maher tried to nail him down, Burr rejected the premise completely because he's funny enough to pull it off. I once heard a comic called Moshe Kasher say that the darker the topic, the funnier the joke has to be. Yeah, Tom Brady roast, anybody? Says Seinfeld just isn't capable of walking that tightrope. That from Jeff, who says he loves the show. What about this from Dave? Dave comes right at our jugular, and I love these emails. Dave, known a.k.a. Tranquil Vibration, says, I don't know who to touch on first, Jespo. The sensitive assholes who can't let life and laughter flow naturally. He's talking about the Seinfeld stuff. Or the next biggest comedy show in Canada with Justin Trudeau and his merry band of clowns. So I choose the latter, but with a twist. I aim straight for the guy playing security for the clown show. Who did Jagmeet Singh think he's fooling by believing that anybody thought he was going to vote against his pension? And here's what hurts me the most. We got a bunch of desperate imbeciles using serious topics to play wedge politics like contraceptives and diabetic medication and much more. We all know the so-called pharmacare plan is nothing but a useless tool with which the NDP and Liberals intended to use to try to make up the 5 points in the polls they so desperately seek. And a word of caution to wrap up, says Dave. He says, I think you're spending way too much time with our dear old Uncle Chuck. He's talking about Charles Adler. Says, I can see you're learning some of his slimy old tricks when you throw to the clips that you play as how you narrate them regarding the whole wacko name-calling fiasco when Pierre Poilievre called Justin Trudeau a wacko. He says, you so happen to admit the Prime Minister's. You omitted the Prime Minister's insult, calling Poilievre spineless, says Dave. He says, but no hurt feelings. It's all love. At the end of the day, you're an entrepreneur. Whatever keeps the ears, the clicks, and of course your friendly relationship with the Prime Minister's office. In fact, he says, I truly respect your loyalty. Heck, I'd help out a desperate friend who's failing at their job too. That's from Dave, who's coming at me and Charles. What about this one from Todd, who says, Jespo, you did a great job with your interview on May 7th. Make sure you check it out with the Discourse co-hosts Erika Barootes and Cheryl Oates. But I really hope next time Erika's a guest that you listen carefully to what she says and check her on it. She talks fast, throws a lot out there, but sprinkled through her dialogue are ridiculous statements, ridiculous positions, like at the beginning of the show when you confronted her with that bold lie that the Premier was caught in over the renewables moratorium, and she suggested that the problem was not the Premier lying, or forcing the CEO to go along with it of the Alberta Electric System Operator or be turfed. It wasn't even the basic reasonable conclusion that the Premier shouldn't lie. It was the fact that in her mind, the CEO of the AESO didn't resign in protest. That was the issue. Never mind the fact that wouldn't solve anything. The CEO would obviously be replaced with a partisan hack, maybe like the ethics commissioner, right? Who would do nothing. Obviously would do the Premier's bidding. There's no world in which she would grant these same excuses to the NDP. There are several other examples in the discussion where Erika shifted the goalposts or the topic to avoid acknowledging what everybody else can easily see. That Danielle Smith will lie and use her position to influence the system to push an agenda that Albertans would not agree with if they were asked about them during an election, which, by the way, is the reason that the UCP made no mention of the renewables ban in their platform and nearly anything else that they're currently doing. But a great job, says Todd. Erika's tough to hold accountable because she's quick on her feet and extremely good at reframing the discussion away from being held accountable. Todd, let me just say this. There are misrepresenting facts, and then there are opinions. And whether or not you like Erika's opinion, I call her on them. You don't have to agree with her, but we bring guests on that we know will have opinions that not everybody agrees with, because that's the whole freaking point, right? Back to Ron, who says he has some strong feelings. Says, Jespo, everything I hear from the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, has me wishing for better options, and bless those folks he had on trying to start up this new Canada Future Party. There's no third way centrist party that's going to come to the rescue. Let's be honest, says Ron. In the next election, we're choosing between a guy who's been there way too long and a guy whose whole vision for Canada is based on bullshit, buzzwords, grievance, and misinformation. The one thing I can't stand is about how Pierre talks. He's a preppy, haughty, toddy conservative from the outskirts of Ottawa, first from Calgary, says feigns concern for the plight of Western Canada, but not a thing will change under him. He can't even be bothered to go on podcasts to be interviewed because he's too afraid to be challenged. It's true. Pierre Poilievre Poilievre has said no to us 6 times. As a matter of fact, he hasn't said no. They just haven't got back to us. But you know what? I heard a credible rumor that Pierre Poilievre, this is Ryan talking now, said no to meeting with the Irving family, the most powerful family east of Toronto. He said no to meeting with the Irvings. So something else is at play here. Let's get back to Ronnie's email. He says it's clear that most voters in this country cannot accept another 4 years of status quo, and that's as much on the stale Liberal brand as it is on the resurgence grievance policies of the Conservatives. You said it yourself, Jespo, in a recent episode of Real Talk, questioning the idea that the next election will be won on the promise of hope and change. It won't. He says, remember these words, Ryan, says Ron. The Conservatives will form the next government due to hubris, complacency on the part of Trudeau and the Liberals. Thanks for always keeping me informed. Real Talk is an invaluable resource that I consistently come back to. Ron, that's music to our ears. And here's one to Rene. And we save this for the end because Rene's writing in from Fort McMurray, and we just want to send love to Fort McMurray. We're thinking about you guys, and obviously the rest of Alberta is ready to open up our arms to wildfire evacuees. Rene says, Jespo, here's a heat seeker for you. No pun intended with all that's happening in my hometown. He says, I enjoyed your interview with Gil McGowan after he pulled out of the NDP leadership race. His brand of politics certainly doesn't align with mine, but I was struck by his passion for the common working person, urging his party to shift its focus back to that important demographic. At the risk of stoking anger, I would say that the late Tommy Douglas would not recognize the party that he once led. It seems to be more preoccupied today with technocratic, burgeoning bureaucratic classes than those wearing actual blue collars. Rene says, like the comparison or not, I think that Gil McGowan and Pierre Poilievre have caught on to something with a tectonic political shift coming along the political class to curry favor with that group. If Mr. McGowan is listening, he should take that as a compliment, and all the best to him in the future. Which leads me to my next point, Jespo. Your guest, Max Fawcett, stoking fears on your March 28th show that trade tariffs are going to come raining down should Americans resurrect the Trump presidency. Despite Mr. Trump's penchant for bloviations, and there's far too many of them, everything I've heard from him is about fair trade between nations, not the free ride that some have. So if there's anything we should pay attention to, the talk of tariffs, maybe cover the defensive deficit that the Americans have while we in the North continue to enjoy the free ride under a protective umbrella. If we don't meet our NATO spending based on 2% of GDP, we could find ourselves paying a steep price if our American neighbors decide the time has come for us to pick up part of their tab if we don't want to invest in our own military. Free ride or free trade? I'll take the latter. And with that, says Rene, I'm off repacking my suitcase, sitting by the front door should the call come in to evacuate. Rene, we're thinking of you and everybody else in the RM of Wood Buffalo. The Flamethrower, is presented by our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Make sure you cap off your May long weekend with their brand new Picnic Peach Cobbler Blizzard treat. Make it a great long weekend, everybody. We're going to observe the stat on the Monday, which means we're back live Tuesday morning. We'll see you then.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan